Okay, the time is now 5 p.m. I'm going to call the special called Vacaville City Council meeting to order. It's April 4th, 2022. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Stockton?
Here.
Councilmember Ritchie?
Here.
Councilmember Silva?
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan?
Here.
Councilmember Wiley?
Here.
Vice Mayor Roberts?
Here.
Mayor Roulette?
I am here. We will move to item 2. 2A, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This is the continuation of the redistricting map. I will turn it over to Michelle Thornbrew and our consultant team to walk you through the next steps.
Good evening. Before we start our item tonight, I'd just like to remind everybody that this public hearing is also being provided in Spanish and Tagalog and American Sign Language. To use the translation services, set your translation button, which can be found in the lower ribbon on the right, to the language you wish to hear the presentation in. To make a public comment, please let the moderator know which language you wish for translation. At that time, a translator will mute themselves and prepare to provide a translation of your comment. For American Sign Language, please type the comments into the chat. So tonight we again have Joanna Jin with BVK here to present maps and hopefully pick a final map this evening that can be adopted at the April 12th deadline in time for our April 17th, or the April 12th meeting in time for our April 17th deadline. And with that, I will hand that over to Joanna.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. And good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Joanna Jen, and it's good to be back before you tonight. And this is our 5th public hearing, and we have a short agenda, which would be to review the draft maps and hopefully for Council to select a preferred map for introduction. And you're very familiar, of course, with the existing districts, so I won't go over the data too much, just to simply note that the city's current population is 95,909, and the ideal population for each district is 15,984. There are 2 districts with impermissible deviations above 10%. That's districts 1 and 4, with a total deviation of 23.26%. And it does not, of course, creating a majority minority district may not be possible. But as you will see, that a coalition district would be, and I'll discuss that too. And so most of the focus, of course, is adjusting for the population. And so with that, I will move on to the draft map options. At the last public hearing, we presented 2 map options for Council. That was map option 1, which was carried over, as well as a new map option 8, which was essentially a revision of map options 4 and 5. At the last public hearing, we received direction from Council to make some modifications to map option 8, which became 8.1. So I will present that to you. It retains the core of the existing districts, creates compact voting districts. Small populations of voters were shifted between districts 1, 4, and 5, and it does not create a majority minority voting district. So moving on to map option 8, we prepared this again in response to comments that were received at the 3rd public hearing. It's a combined revision to map options 4 and 5, and the population is balanced with a total deviation at 9.76%. Districts are compact and contiguous. Leisure-Town is kept wholly intact in District 2. District 4 does not extend below Alamo Drive, and the commercial area north of Hume Way was moved from District 3 to 4. Also, at the fourth public hearing, there was council direction to keep the Brown Street community together. And we had recommended coming back so that we could provide demographic data as well. But going back to that scenario, for District 1, if 500 people were moved from District 1 to District 2, District 1's population would have been 14,802. And that would have resulted in a negative 7.4% deviation. With that adjustment, absent any other change, that would have resulted in an impermissible 12.88% total deviation. The findings from option 8 is that the total deviation, as that map was drawn, not as proposed, is acceptable at 9.76%. It incorporates council feedback from the third public hearing to make adjustments to map options 4 and 5. District 6 remains wholly intact, but it does not create a majority minority voting district, although it does create a coalition district. So here we are at the final, at the 8.1, that's a revision to map option 8. Council had expressed a desire to keep the Leisure Town community of interest intact, and to do so by retaining the I-80 as a boundary between districts 1 and 3. And so there are 3 big changes that occur with this map. It uses the I-80 as a divider between districts 1 and 2. And this takes into account Councilmember Ritchie's comments from the third public hearing, as well as other council members to use the I-80 as a boundary and to keep Leisure Town intact. It also addresses Councilmember Stockton's comments from the fourth public hearing to see if it would be possible to make adjustments to the boundaries between districts 1 and 3, and also districts 1 and 2, including east of the Nut Tree Airport. So that is a difference that you'll see here between the existing district boundaries as well as the other map options, which is where the I-80 split ends. You'll notice in this map option that the I-80 split extends from between districts 1 and 2 all the way eastward up to Midway Road. And so that's the biggest difference. The second change is that it also addresses a request by Councilmember Silva to preserve the Brown Street community of interest. It moves from District 1 to District 3, the commercial area within the Nugget Markets along East Monte Vista Avenue between Allison Drive and Browns Valley Parkway. And so there has been some shifting in the shape of District 3. And the last change that occurs is it extends from District 1 into District 3, some population that shifted as a result of the last change. And so what happens here, and actually I'll shift over my screen so you can see that a little bit more. Okay, can you see that map okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, so what you'll see here, I'll show you, this is what map option 8 currently looks like. And when I click on map option 8.1 and there's an overlay, you'll notice that this is the change that occurs with Brown Street and keeping it intact there. Well, the population shifted over here from District 1 extending into District 3 between Allison Drive and Puta South all the way up to the I-80. The other change that occurs is District 1 now extends into the area running south of the I-80 between Puta South and Nut Tree Road. And it kind of looks like the boot of Italy right here. And it now adds that to District 1. And so that area includes a portion of the Vacaville Premium Outlets south of the I-80 and west of the Nut Tree Road. Okay. And so with that, over here, we have the demographic information. There has been some shifting in District 3 where there's a loss of 163 before it. And that is because there has to be 5 days between the introduction of the ordinance as well as the adoption of the ordinance. And there also has to be 3 days for posting of the map. And with that, that concludes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Silva.
Residents along Markham area very well. So I just want to get that out there publicly. So number 2, I think I'm not a big fan of 8.1. It looks, I realize it's, I don't know what the definition for us at a local level would be, gerrymandering and whatnot, but I just think like that layout's kind of awkward. I think it adds maybe more confusion to a confusing process for a lot of residents as is with respect to districts. I do have a strong passion for that eastern part of Markham, and I think with respect to where residents are at, I think maybe limiting the impact on redrawing the district lines. I would like to support option 1, and then we'll see how things go. 10 years from now, I imagine that overhang from District 1 into District 5 that would be altered. So I wish we could play around with the maps, fine tune them a little bit more. But I also realize, we're on a time crunch, and it's been a kind of an interesting process based on the feedback. I think a couple of the maps that were suggested were very similar as far as limiting the amount of deviation, and that was something I just personally liked because it limits the need for us to come back 10 years down the road to adjust it. But I think, as our city continues to grow, I think the element that's improbable. And I think the more methodical that we transition to there, I think, maybe it's easier on residents to follow along what's going on. But I think it's also important to everybody to know, and this is more for the public, because I feel very strongly that the council's aligned with this concept that we are truly committed to representing all residents within our city. We may, differ on, different philosophies and whatnot, but when it comes down to doing what's best for our community, I think 100% we're always on board with that. So I'll leave it up to, hear more comments, but I'd support option 1.
Thank you. Roberts?
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate you guys taking the council's considerations for trying to keep districts intact. I know it's a difficult playing with maps, but I do think 8.1 is kind of step backwards from 8 due to the lines can be confusing for districts. They're not clearly defined on main roads. With that, I'll support either 1 or the original 8, just because the lines on 8.1, I think, will be confusing to residents, especially the little boot that switch between 2 and 3. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for option 1. Is there a second?
Silva. Also second.
Thank you. Silva, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stockton?
Yes.
Councilmember Ritchie?
Yes.
Councilmember Silva?
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan?
I'm going to vote no.
Councilmember Wiley?
I am going to vote no, I guess, because I wanted to hear about Councilmember Sullivan and District 4, because I knew he was interested in having that extend, and I don't see that in map 1. So we hadn't had that discussion, but I'll vote no for that reason.
Vice Mayor Roberts?
I'll go yes.
Mayor Roulette?
Yes. Okay, we made it through. We'll go to the next item, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is our regular COVID update in a sense. We're going to start off with our fire chief giving the council some updated numbers. We'll turn it over to our city attorney, Melinda Stewart, to talk a little bit about the resolution, and then I will wrap it up with regards to potential options for the council's consideration.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. As usual, I will start off with the latest data. California is up to just shy of 8.5 million cases. Now, the difference in here, the 79,336, is from 4 weeks ago. So the number of daily cases is decreasing, which is really good news. Just over 88,207, it's at 88,207 deaths. And then the 7-day positivity is 1.6. It's a decrease of 0.3 over the last week from the state website. And then Solano County, in the last 4 weeks, there's been an increase of 871 cases. A huge decrease in the number of active cases. We're down to 177 active cases as of last Friday. And there are only 5 hospitalized in the county with COVID. That's a decrease of 26 over the last month. Now the ICU availability went down. It's at 28%. It was at 41% or 43%. Not quite sure what that is, but probably other cases other than COVID is what's causing the ICU availability to go down. And then there have been 11 deaths over the last month. 7-day positivity is just slightly over the states. It's at 1.9. It's a slight increase over the last week, but still nowhere near where we used to be. And then Vacaville, we're up to 21,650 cases, an increase of 208 over the last month. Next slide, please. Nationwide, the BA.2 variant is becoming more prevalent in the United States. There has been, because it's more contagious, has been some increase in some states as far as the number of cases. But what they're saying from everything that I've read is that it's less virulent, and people are likening it to more like they're getting symptoms more like a common cold. And then I know this says most states, but actually as of March 25th, all 50 states have dropped their indoor mask mandate. So Hawaii was the last one that dropped their mask mandate on March 25th. In the state, the new daily cases I had mentioned continue to drop. And then as far as Solano County is concerned, we are in the low tier. So we're in the lowest tier as far as community transmission, according to CDC. That's less than 10 cases per 100,000 per day. So that is really good. And then as far as Vacaville, nothing has changed in the last month. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, I believe, our city attorney, Melinda Stewart.
Great, thanks, Chief, and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. So tonight you are once again back to considering whether to return to in-person meetings of the City Council and other city boards and commissions, or whether COVID-related health and safety concerns still exist, which would dictate toward continuing remote meetings for the next 30 days. The current resolution does provide for remote meetings through April 11th. As you know very well by now, to continue remote meetings for another month, the City Council must make certain findings. The first finding is that a state of emergency is still in effect, and that is the case. The second finding, which is applicable to your circumstances, is that the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability to meet safely in person. Next slide, please. So some factors that could support returning to in-person meetings include many of the statistics that the chief just shared. COVID-related numbers are generally decreasing. Mask mandates are being lifted or have been lifted. City Hall has reopened to the public for walk-in business, and Solano County is in the low category of the CDC's transmission metric. On the other hand, some factors that could support continuing remote meetings include the fact that city staff do continue to contract COVID, which not only compromises their own health and safety, but also can disrupt workflow and productivity. The CDC and state continue to recommend the use of face coverings in indoor public settings, so that's a recommendation, not a mandate. Face coverings are required in certain high-risk settings like transit and healthcare settings. Also, some of the concerns over the new subvariant BA.2, which the chief just touched on. So again, those are some of the factors for your consideration tonight. Also in our discussion, our last discussion on the matter, some questions arose about whether under the Brown Act, if the council does not renew the AB 361 resolution and returns to in-person meetings, whether last-minute arrangements could be made to accommodate remote participation by a council member that falls ill after the agenda is posted. So I do want to confirm that the Brown Act does not allow for such accommodations, and in that case, the council member would have to miss the meeting. Tonight, we are asking the council to either let the existing AB 361 resolution expire, which would prompt the return to in-person meetings at your next regular city council meeting on April 12th, or in the alternative to adopt the resolution before you, extending the current remote meeting resolution, which would allow for remote meetings through May 5th of 2022. But before you discuss that and vote on that, the city manager's office has some information on the availability of hybrid meetings. So I'll hand it over to Aaron Bush.
Thank you, Melinda. Next slide, please. Okay, so at the last meeting, the council raised the question about the ability to provide hybrid meetings, which in this case means the ability to go back to in-person meetings with the ability for people to connect with our council meetings in some form of virtual or conferencing system. So we've explored those options in more detail, and tonight I'm just going to give you a quick update on those. And so really there's two options, a Zoom integration or a telephone call-in system. And we'll start with the Zoom integration because there's actually sub options in those. So next slide, please. So a temporary Zoom integration is really, just as it says, temporary. The system that we purchased several years ago is a very worthwhile system, but the challenge is that it was not installed to do what we were asking it to do in terms of providing this type of service. So it's only temporary in that it needs to be modified to support hybrid meetings for a limited time. If that option was chosen, it would compromise our stability of the system from an audio standpoint. And so the predictability and reliability of the quality of the meetings to the outside people visiting our Zoom meetings would not be able, that service would not be predictable or reliable. And so we're not really in favor of that solution. That particular option does require the use of an additional staff person with a separate computer access to allow, serve as a gatekeeper for that service. Next option, please. Next slide, please. The more permanent solution is really creating a Zoom room in the council chambers, much like we did in our AB conference room. We would need to fully update the hardware and software integration into the existing system. And essentially that means hardwiring the system into the council chambers so that that feature could be added. It would support offsite panelists, not attendees, to participate and present video presentations within the council chambers. But that service does cost a one-time cost of approximately anywhere from $45,000 to $70,000. But that would give us the predictability and reliability of that service if the council decides that they would like to provide the option of having outside public join those in-person meetings. Next slide, please. The final option that was referenced was a telephone call-in system. Currently, we do not have the ability to do this in the council chambers. We would essentially need to create a digital call center with multiple connections. It would require a separate concurrent system, and the audio integration is limited to broadcast in the chambers. It will require a heavy reliance on multiple city staff to answer and direct those callers, and the callers do have the potential to be impacted as a result of that unpredictable phone tree system. So next slide, please. So with that, those are the options that we see for council's consideration if they should desire to go back to in-person meetings and explore the possibility of incorporating a hybrid option. So with that, we're going to put it back to the council for your discussion about the passage or expiration of AB 361s for the resolution. So with that, we have the recommendations in front of you. And then with regards to the hybrid meetings, we would just need council to give us a consensus on your desire for how to proceed with those. So next slide. With that, your team is here to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to open up public comment. I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. And I'll start with Councilmember Sullivan, please.
Thanks. Do you have a timetable, Aaron, on the temporary or permanent accommodations for Zoom?
My understanding is that it would take several months just because of the lead time for equipment and then installation. So we would have to coordinate the construction schedule with council meetings and other commission and board meetings in there as well.
So is it a possibility to go like, let's say we withdraw AB 361 tonight, we decide to remove that, but go temporary. Could we remove that, go temporary and work on permanent? Is that an option?
You would essentially have to, because if you desired any form of hybrid, it would have to start temporary and then progress into the permanent solution.
Okay, I guess my concern is I don't want to just have a cliff, right? Like we decide to do hybrid and there's 6 months where we have to do in-person anyways, but it sounds like we could decide to go back to in-person meetings. We could have a temporary option right off the bat and then work towards a permanent option over time. So there wouldn't be disruption to folks that want to call in from home. Is that correct? Well,
we can certainly use the temporary, but again, I can't vouch for the quality of how that will work. I mean, our team is put a lot of effort and research into this, and they're doing everything they can with, duct tape and paper clips to make it work. But until we actually try it, there's no real telling what it will look and sound like.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the option you guys looking into it. I realize one of the biggest hangups is the live broadcasting on channel 26, just the way the system is set up. Is live broadcasting on channel 26 a legal requirement for us to do on public access, or can that be recorded and put on at a later time if that's the hangup with the system? And then that's one of the questions. Another one is, would it be possible to do, or at least test out the hybrid temporary system, because we haven't done it and it's hard to do a theoretical answer on that. So I think it'd be willing to try. And if it does cause significant issues, then back off of that until we can get a more permanent solution. And as city managers, we've talked, I do think that cost is a little high. I do understand there's some special equipment that's required for channel 26. So if we do decide to go the permanent hybrid, I'd like to see more of a cost breakdown on that. We can do that on the side unless they want to, the other council members would like to see that. And then if we do go a permanent hybrid system, would that have a cost savings on that we'd have to pay out for different panelists that we'd cover their travel costs? So would that cut down on those costs to us? And those are my questions. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
So I'm looking at my notes here. So with regards to the, is it a legal requirement to broadcast channel 6? No, as best as we can tell, but it is necessary to broadcast in order to record our meetings. So it's kind of a catch-22. We need to do that, and honestly, it is a customer service issue as well. So the last comment that was mentioned in terms of the offsetting cost for attendees, can you explain that a little bit more, because I'm not following?
I know for a lot of consultants and stuff there's travel costs built in that if they do have to come to the city to present information if we are live. So if we did Zoom panelists, would any of that cost be offset by cost savings that we are not spending on travel costs for consultants or other panelists that may have to travel to the city?
Oh, I suspect there's probably the potential for that. I would say that it's probably minimal in the overall scheme of things. So, I mean, I don't know the real long-term cost savings in that regard.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ritchie.
First and foremost, thank you. I really appreciate all the updates we got from Chief Conception and the whole team and everyone's city staff. I know it's been a long go at this with the updates and the data presented in the matter, which is insightful and kind of like not scary. But yeah, I want to rock and roll and get back to life. I feel like it's an 800-pound gorilla not to kind of really be truthful. The whole country, city, states, we're up and running. We're having fun. We're back at it. We got to move forward, stop being scared, and we got to go. I mean, we have to, get in front of people. I made a comment, I think to the city manager about leadership. There's two types of leaders. One leads from the front, one leads from the back. We're leaders in the city. And we need to be good examples. We need to lead from the front. If one person in our city staff, public works, is out there interacting with the city and putting themselves in harm's way, and we're hypocrites. If one person's doing it, we all should. So I think I want to make a statement. We got to lead from the front and if we're asking one person to put themselves in harm's way, we all have to. Nothing's perfect in life. There's always going to be problems. I mean, it's part of life. Something can always happen. So we can't live scared in a corner. We got to get up and get out and do it. I just feel that, take the 70 G's, let's give it to the kids. I mean, let's agree to spend the money. Let's give it to the kids. It's summertime. Let's disperse that money instead of spending on some software for maybe the 7 people that would call in. I'd rather invest that money back in the community instead of software. I'd rather give it to kids, put it towards parks and recs. Any kids that need help getting into programs to get active in the summer, give them the money. I'd rather spend the money for kids than hear my voice clear. I'm just very passionate about not kind of pretending like the elephant room's not there. Like we're back at it. We've done the best we can as a city, state, country to move forward. Let's not go backwards.
Wiley.
Thanks for the information as well. And basically on the presentation for the agenda, there's a temporary choice or permanent. Both of them will take time to get done. So it sounds like it's kind of people were thinking that the temporary solution is just the permanent one before it's finished. But they're two separate things, correct? But it will just take us a while to get a permanent one done if we want it.
So the permanent installation, which just real quickly is funded through PEG funding, which is very specific to this type of equipment and improvements. So unfortunately, it could not go to other resources as was suggested, but I appreciate the thought. But the permanent installation would require equipment that is really dependent on the supply chain and the availability of vendor competition. And so it could be that, because we're not the only municipality that's looking into this type of approach, it could be 6 months to a year, I'm told. And so in the meantime, if the council is interested to utilize a hybrid methodology, really we would have to try out the temporary method and do the best that we can with the system as it currently works, with some modifications to incorporate that resource. Again, we don't know exactly how, what kind of quality we're going to get out of that, but we don't know until we try it, I guess.
So I really don't have reservations about returning to in-person meetings. I do think that it's great to have the ability for people to call in, but again, we only sometimes don't have a lot of people taking advantage of that, and so you spend a lot of money for a few people, but it's nice to have that public access available. I also do think that it would make a lot of sense for consultants to be able to, call in rather than drive from, a long distance to be here in person sometime. So I like the availability of that as well. And then, hiring a staff, I assume that it would be sort of a job to begin with that wouldn't be, at the high level pay. But for technology, I know you have to know what you're doing, so it would probably cost more than we would think on a permanent basis. I do have real concerns with audio, like the temporary thing. If it messes up, you try to have a meeting, but then people can't hear or people get kicked out, then it's really frustrating as well. So I'll just say I don't have an issue with in-person meetings at this time. That's it.
Okay, Roberts?
I believe Councilmember Stockton has his hand up. I'll let him go ahead.
Oh, I apologize. Councilmember Stockton.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I have a couple questions. I'm absolutely ready to get back in-person meeting, but I do have a couple questions. If we do a hybrid, I agree with Councilwoman Wiley. I think if we're kind of on shaky ground, we're opening the door for people to be really upset when they can't hear or they can't comment. But the bigger question is there any sort of liability, Melinda, with giving this option and then not having it work? Because having people that want to make a comment that could have drove, but for the convenience chose this other option, and then they don't get to participate. But we offer that or we sanction that. Is there some sort of liability with that?
So right now under AB 361, there is, if your technology doesn't work, you have to stop the meeting and you can't continue it until that technology issue is fixed. Mm-hmm. My recommendation, if we go back to in-person and not do the AB 361 resolution, would be to make it clear on the agenda for this period of time that the meeting will be held in person, that we are offering Zoom on kind of a pilot project basis, and that we're not guaranteeing the quality or the availability of that technology.
Okay, and that's not ideal, certainly. And so I'll end with this comment. I feel like it is time to go back in person, but I also recognize that life things can change in life, right? The numbers can change, a new variant can come out. Is there anything that would prevent our state or our meetings, from going back and doing what we're doing right now? Right. I mean, I kind of feel like now it's time to go back in. But if things change, we can always go back and do these Zoom meetings for everyone. Isn't that correct?
As long as there's still a state of emergency by the governor, then yes, we could go back and readopt another AB 361 resolution.
Okay, so I mean that's still an option if things change down the road. I think spending the $70,000, there's a lot of equipment, computer equipment, different things that can be improved or worked on with that amount of money. So I would agree with Councilmember Ritchie on his comments with that. I'm ready to go back in person, knowing full well that we don't know what tomorrow offers, and going back to the full virtual is, I think, an option that will always be available.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Roberts.
Yeah, I was going to make a motion. If Councilmember Sullivan or Silva actually had comments, I'll let them.
You want to hold? Because I haven't made a comment either.
Yeah, I'll hold on a motion, let everybody else comment if they have comments.
Okay, great. Councilmember Silva. Sullivan. I apologize.
No worries. So it's kind of I was talking to the city manager about this the other day. Most of the council started pretty much in a hybrid environment. And so you'd never really known anything prior to, obviously you've probably been to council meetings and you'd been to other meetings and whatnot. So it was very different, right? So I attended council meetings for about 2 years before I got elected, and then had about 2 years before you guys got on. So it was about 4 years. 99% of the meetings, we had the same 1 or 2 people in the audience every single time. And they had the same 2 issues. You'd have 20 staff on the left side of the room. You'd have 1 or 2 people on the right side. You were lucky if the newspaper covered it periodically or they'd come and show up. And as much as some of the comments and the feedback and, during the protest phase, we got roasted and it was uncomfortable and shitty for all of us, excuse my French. I appreciate the feedback. And there've been plenty of folks that are medically vulnerable or fragile, or they have kids, or they have a variety of other issues. They're disabled. I've heard from folks that I know used to come in wheelchairs, and now they don't have to, and they're very appreciative of that. And so I think for us not even to try when we have at least 5 to 7 to 10 people per meeting, and it used to be, again, 1 or 2 of the same people, and you guys probably know their names, and they come talk about the same 2 topics over and over and over again. I think it is probably one of the better changes that has come with COVID. And if, 70,000 to me to inform a couple hundred residents per year is kind of a no-brainer. So I do totally understand the questions. I get the sentiment, but really going from where we were at before with an empty audience every single time dang near to actually having 10 to 15 to 20 people involved and actually listening and calling in and offering ideas, I think is valuable. And in a couple of instances this year, there have been speakers that have called in who have totally changed my perspective on items. And so I think it would be short-sighted for us not to do that. I understand the technology issues. I understand how frustrating it is if we do a temporary setup and the mic's off or the speaker's off or it's something crazy, but it really can't be much worse than it is today. I love Melinda's suggestion about the temporary waiver, kind of bear with us while we get through this phase. For me, pre Zoom to post Zoom, it's night and day. And I know exactly what we'll get if we cut off Zoom options. We'll get those same two people back. I think those same two people haven't been coming on Zoom, so maybe they don't know how to Zoom, which maybe the same two people will now come in person. We'll get people on Zoom. So I think we get the best of both worlds. I think we get everything all the council members want with the hybrid option. And I feel pretty strongly about it just based on my perspective from attending those meetings without Zoom and now being on Zoom. So I'm strongly supporting the hybrid option with the temporary option to lead to hybrid. If we find that over a couple of meetings through the temporary option, we get 0 attendees for a couple of meetings in a row, I'm definitely willing to talk. I just don't think that's going to happen. And so, again, I think it would be short-sighted for us not to at least try it and just see how it goes.
Vice Mayor Roberts.
There's still Councilmember Silva. I've just had my hand up for the motion for after everybody's done commenting.
Okay. Councilmember Silva.
Let's go back in person and would suggest we have staff look into the temporary quality options, and that's something we'll talk about later down the road. But let's get back in person.
Okay, and I know Roberts wants to make a motion, so I'm going to jump in. And unfortunately, I disagree with Councilmember Sullivan. I sat on this city council for many, many years, and I could tell you when there was something important to the city of Vacaville, that place was packed. Maybe not every single meeting, but when something mattered, people came down and spoke. We've had overflow in our city council chambers, and I could probably ask Michelle how many times. It overflows. When people really care about what's going on, they will come down. And you mentioned people in wheelchairs would come down and now they wouldn't have to come down, but they came down because it mattered to them. And I can tell you right now, I've never been more embarrassed in my whole life than when we started Zoom with people calling in. And I know that you guys heard what I heard. I was embarrassed for the city. I was embarrassed for people, businesses that wanted to come here because they listen. Developers listen to those meetings. And you don't have to come down and talk. You can listen to it on multiple different variants out there. And they would hear that and they would call me. And I told, in fact, it's Councilmember Sullivan that I called. We had meetings with big bio manufacturers that said they don't want to come to Vacaville because the people on the Zoom were destroying the city of Vacaville. And you can sit there on social media all day. And I don't think any of the 7 people on the city council will disagree. But anyone on social media can go on and say the horrible, outlandish lies, and we can't do anything about it. And that's what you do when you say, let's go back in person, but just open up social media to our meeting. We heard people say profanity that I never, ever heard at the city council meeting. No one comes up to the dais and screams F-bombs. But on social media, when we were on Zoom, bam, everybody was calling in. There was no respect, people calling people out. I think it's a horrible idea. I understand the idea. Like if there was seriously people that were like, I can't get out of my house and I really, truly want to be part of this. We still have outlets for that. But getting a group of angry individuals to call in because they don't care about Vacaville. They care about an agenda. We're just opening ourselves up for that. And I've never been more disappointed. And if everyone on the city council doesn't agree with me, I was sad for city of Vacaville with people calling in, and it wasn't anybody that we knew. or it wasn't friends or whatever. It was just people that were just angry, mean. And still to this day, we still get some calls that are just angry and mean. And it's disappointing. And I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be there and have people call in and say horrible, horrible things to the city council, horrible things to the staff, horrible things about the city of Vacaville, and then possibly don't even live in Vacaville. We had multiple phone calls that they would announce, I'm not from Vacaville, but I'm calling in to tell you how horrible your city is. And I'm saying, if you're vested in the city of Vacaville, if you truly care about an item that's on the agenda, come on down to the city council or send us an email. Send us an email and we will make sure that every city council member gets it. And if you can't make it, we totally understand. I can't remember what council member said it tonight, but one of the council members said, hey, let the city council know what's going on and we will make sure your message is heard. And I think that we're just setting ourselves up for failure, because I could lead a charge immediately for people that don't care and say, oh, you know what, call in on this one item and just bombard everybody with a phone call. And I don't think it's fair to the city of Vacaville. I don't think it's fair to this city council, to be honest. And I wouldn't vote for a hybrid. And if we could control the hybrid, I would be for it, because absolutely, I would try to make it easier for some folks. But I think it was an obstacle for destruction. And I don't want to see it. I don't want to be a part of it. And I wouldn't vote for it. And I will go to Vice Mayor Roberts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and motion to go back in person, but I'd like to do a hybrid pilot program to see how well it works, because we don't know what the quality will be until we actually try it. And so I said we give it a few meetings. If the quality is subpar or there's connectivity issues, then we drop that until we can figure something different out. My main reasoning for this is I'm all for visibility in the city. So yeah, YouTube is good. I also really think it should be broadcast on Facebook Live on the city's Facebook page. I'd really like to see what the viewership is for Channel 26 and how many people actually watch that. But so my motion is back in person with the hybrid temporary pilot program to see how well it actually works.
Mr. City Manager, is that a good motion?
So just to be clear, that we're not adopting a resolution through AB 361. We're letting the current resolution expire, which would mean that council and commissions would return to in-person meetings, and that we would, in the interim, go ahead with our temporary hybrid system and report back to council after several meetings on the quality issues as well as the utilization of that feature. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that.
So, yeah, just so, because I want to vote for in person. So we're going to go in person, but it's in person for everyone until we figure out a way to do it, a hybrid.
In person for everybody with the
I'm asking the city manager. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm asking the city manager.
No, well, as I hear the vice mayor's recommendation is to immediately, well, first meeting of the council would be in person with the utilization of the temporary hybrid is what I hear the vice mayor saying.
Yes.
Can we vote on these separately?
What's that?
Can we just vote on these separately to make it easier, or no?
Yeah,
yeah, we can do that.
If I can, sorry, this is the city attorney. If I can add something, you do not need to vote if you want to return to in-person meetings. Then the resolution would just expire if you don't make a motion on that. So the only vote that's needed is on the hybrid.
Okay, then yeah, motion just to move to a hybrid meeting for future meetings on a pilot program and let the other one expire, let the AB 361 expire.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ritchie?
So a no vote means regardless, we're going back in person, correct?
No, just just a no vote means that you don't want to go to a hybrid. So a no vote would mean you don't want to go hybrid.
Correct, but regardless, we're going back anyways, because we're letting expire, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I vote no. I don't want to waste our city's money. So I vote no.
Councilmember Silva.
No, I think we should try it out first and then bring it back.
Councilmember Sullivan.
I'm voting yes.
Councilmember Wiley.
I'm voting yes, because that still means we're trying it out. Yes.
Vice Mayor Roberts.
Yes.
Councilmember Stockton.
No.
Mayor Roulette.
No, I'll make a motion, just do in person and then let the staff figure out whatever, but just to kill the Zoom right now. Is there a second?
I thought that's what we just did.
We already did that. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, so I think, Mr. Mayor, again, to break this out, as the city attorney suggested, that if it sounds like there's unanimous consensus on the in-person.
Just stay Zoom?
No, that will allow AB 361 to expire. So there's no action needed from the council, which means that your next meeting, the April 12th city council meeting, would return to in-person. Based on
everything in person, no Zoom. Okay, perfect.
Correct.
And then can we go back? Thank you, City Council. Can we go back to the last item, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do need to introduce the ordinance. I'm going to turn it over to City Clerk for that first item.
Thank you.
So because the motion did not include the introduction of the ordinance, I would like to just have that motion restated to introduce the ordinance, and then I'll read the ordinance title, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want we went with option one with the second. So it was option one was second.
Yes.
Is that what
option one was the map chosen?
Yes.
But we just need to state that we're introducing the ordinance.
Yes.
I'll read the title to the ordinance. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Vacaville amending section 2.60.020 of chapter 2.60 of title 2 of the Vacaville Municipal Code regarding by-district elections, adjusting the boundaries of City Council election districts and confirming such revised council district boundaries as reflected in attached map 1.
Great. And with that, I think we go to Good Night Vacaville, correct, Mr. City Manager?
That's correct. Thank you for your.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, City Council, for sitting through another special meeting. I would like to make a motion that we have a meeting every week. Good night. Good night.